The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, intercepted by the Deep Space Communications Array in New Mexico. It was not a greeting. It was not an invitation to join the galactic community. It was a demand. Captain James Reed stood in the command center of Earth Defense Network headquarters, watching the translated text scroll across the main display. Around him, technicians worked in silence, their usual chatter replaced by an uncomfortable tension that filled the room like static electricity. "They want us to surrender," Dr. Lisa Park said from her workstation. The xenobiologist had been called in the moment the transmission was decoded. She pushed her glasses up her nose, a nervous habit Reed had noticed during their 3 hours together. Complete and unconditional surrender within 72 hours. To who? Reed asked, though he already knew the answer. The Galactic Council. They represent something called the harmonious collective of civilized worlds. According to this message, they control over 10,000 species across known space. Park pulled up another screen. They're offering us protection, integration into their society, and access to their technology, in exchange for our resources, labor, and complete political submission. Reed read the message again. The language was formal, almost polite, but the underlying tone was clear. This was not a negotiation. It was an ultimatum delivered with the casual confidence of a power that had never been refused. "What happens if we say no?" asked General Marcus Webb, entering the command center with long strides. The general's face showed no emotion, but Reed had served under him long enough to recognize the dangerous calm in his eyes. Park hesitated. "The message says they will implement appropriate consequences for noncompliance. It doesn't specify what that means, but the implication is clear. Military action." "They're threatening us," Webb said flatly. "They don't see it as a threat," Park replied, pulling up a new analysis. "I've been studying the linguistic patterns in their message. This is a standard template. They've done this before, probably thousands of times. To them, this is just administrative procedure." Reed moved closer to the display, showing the alien text. "They think we're going to just ... give up? Hand over our entire planet because they asked nicely? They don't think we have a choice," Park said. She brought up a star map showing Earth's position. "Look at this." They sent the message from a fleet currently positioned 3 light years away. They have faster-than-light travel, weapons we can't even imagine, and the backing of 10,000 conquered worlds. From their perspective, we're primitives with barely functional space travel. We should be grateful they're even offering terms. "Grateful," Webb repeated, his voice cold. He turned to Reed. "Get Ambassador Cross on the line. Then contact every military commander on the planet. I want a full mobilization within 6 hours." "Sir, if we mobilize, they might see it as an act of aggression," one of the technicians warned. Webb smiled without humor. "They sent us a surrender demand. How much more aggressive does it get?" He pointed at the message on screen. "They've already declared their intentions. Now we declare ours." Over the next 12 hours, the world changed. News of the alien message leaked despite attempts at containment. Governments scrambled to coordinate responses. Military bases across every continent went to high alert. The United Nations convened an emergency session that lasted through the night. Reed found Dr. Park in the xenobiology lab at 3 in the morning, surrounded by holographic displays showing alien physiology data extracted from the transmission's metadata. "Tell me we have something," Reed said. Carrying 2 cups of coffee. Park accepted one gratefully. "Maybe. The transmission included baseline biological data, probably so we'd understand who we're dealing with. Look at this." She expanded a diagram showing an alien skeletal structure. "Their bones are hollow, like birds. Their muscle density is roughly 1/3 of ours. And their homeworld gravity is 0.4 standard G. They're fragile, Reed said, understanding immediately. Extremely. Their atmospheric pressure is half of Earth's. The oxygen content in their air is 8% compared to our 21. To them, our planet would be like living inside a high-pressure oxygen chamber. Park pulled up more data. And it's not just them. I've cross-referenced the transmission data with everything we know about exoplanets. Most life-bearing worlds in the galaxy cluster around similar conditions. Low gravity, thin atmospheres, mild climates. But not Earth. Earth is an anomaly, Captain. We evolved on what the galaxy would classify as a death world. High gravity, violent weather, aggressive megafauna, frequent extinction events. Humans didn't just survive here. We thrived. We became apex predators on a planet where everything was trying to kill us. Reed stared at the alien diagram, understanding dawning. They don't know what they're dealing with. Neither do we, Park cautioned. They have technology centuries ahead of ours. But there's something else. She brought up the linguistic analysis again. I've been studying their communication patterns. There's no military terminology in their vocabulary. No words for combat tactics, battlefield strategy, or guerrilla warfare. They have words for enforcement and pacification, but nothing that suggests actual military conflict. Because they've never needed it, Reed said. Everyone just surrenders. Exactly. The Galactic Council has been so dominant for so long that actual war has become theoretical to them. They show up, they demand submission, and species comply because the alternative seems impossible. Ambassador John Cross arrived at dawn with a drafted response. He looked exhausted, but determined. General Webb joined them in the command center, along with military leaders from 15 nations connected via secure video links. The response is simple, Cross said, displaying the message on screen. We acknowledge receipt of their communication. We thank them for their introduction to the galactic community. And we politely but firmly decline their offer. That's it? One of the European commanders asked. That's it, Webb confirmed. Short, professional, and absolute. We're not going to threaten them or posture. We're simply going to say no. They won't accept it, the Chinese admiral warned. I'm counting on it, Webb replied. He pulled up a tactical display showing the solar system. We've been tracking their scout ships for the past 8 hours. They're already moving into the outer system, probably expecting us to roll over. Instead, we're going to show them something they've never seen before. Reed studied the display. Earth's space fleet was modest mining vessels, research stations, and a handful of military satellites, developed during the quiet arms race of the 2030s, against an interstellar armada. It looked pathetic, but General Webb was smiling. They're coming to pacify a primitive world, Webb said. What they're going to find is something the galaxy hasn't seen in a very long time. A species that evolved fighting for every scrap of survival. A species that never learned to surrender because extinction was always the alternative. The response was sent at 0600 hours. The message was brief, translated into the alien language, and transmitted toward the approaching fleet. It included Earth's formal rejection of the demands, a request for peaceful dialogue as equals, and a warning that any hostile action would be met with appropriate defense. It also included something else, a data packet containing human history. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, and the countless ways humanity had nearly destroyed itself, only to rebuild stronger. It was meant as context, a way to help the aliens understand who they were dealing with. The Galactic Council received the message 6 hours later. Their response was not immediate, which Reed found telling. They were confused, perhaps even uncertain. In 10,000 conquests, they had never received a refusal. They're going to come anyway, Park said quietly, standing beside Reed as they watched the tracking data. I know, Reed replied. A lot of people are going to die. I know that too. Reed turned to face her. But we didn't start this. They came to our home, threatened our families, and expected us to just surrender our entire civilization. That's not who we are. That's never been who we are. Park nodded slowly. Then I suppose they're about to learn why humans are the galaxy's most dangerous mistake. On the edge of the solar system, the Council's advance fleet began their approach. 50 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built, moving with the confidence of uncontested power. They expected fear. They expected last-minute pleas for mercy. What they got was something else entirely. Captain James Reed sat in the command chair of the retrofitted mining vessel Defiance, surrounded by crew members who had volunteered knowing they might not return. Around him, Earth's makeshift defense fleet took positions near Jupiter's orbit. The aliens thought they were coming to pacify a garden world. They were about to meet the Death Worlders. And humanity was finally terribly awake. Asterisk. The Council fleet moves through space like a parade, their formation precise and ceremonial. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of the flagship Harmonious Dawn, observing the primitive planet ahead with mild curiosity. In his 300 years of service, he had overseen 47 integration operations. This would be his 48th. Status report, Vex said, his translator rendering the clicks and whistles of his native language into standard Council speech. The primitive vessels have formed a defensive line near the system's 6th planet, his tactical officer reported. 17 ships total. All appear to be converted industrial craft. No significant weapons detected. Vex felt a flutter of confusion, an emotion his species rarely experienced. They mean to fight? It appears so, Commander. This is unprecedented. It was. In all of Council history, no species had ever mounted military resistance to an integration fleet. The very concept seemed irrational. The Council had technology perfected over millions of years. They had numbers beyond counting. They had the might of 10,000 worlds behind them. What could one primitive planet possibly do? Perhaps they misunderstood our message, Vex suggested. Transmit again. Make clear that resistance will only bring suffering. The message was sent. The human ships did not retreat. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel. Put it through. The image appeared on screen. A human male wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. His face was strange, features arranged in a way that seemed aggressive, even in neutrality. His eyes were forward-facing predators. Eyes locked directly on the camera with unsettling intensity. This is Captain James Reed of the Earth Defense Network, the human said, his voice carried through translation software. You are approaching sovereign territory without authorization. Turn back now, or we will be forced to defend our system. Vex felt another unfamiliar emotion: surprise. You cannot be serious. Look at your vessels. Look at ours. You have no chance of victory. Maybe not, Reed replied. But we have something you don't. We have a reason to fight. The transmission ended. Vex stood in silence for a long moment. His crew waited, equally confused by the exchange. Finally, he made his decision. Proceed with standard pacification protocol. Target their weapon systems only. Minimize casualties. These creatures don't understand the situation. We will show them. The Council ships moved forward, their energy weapons powering up. It would be over in minutes that Captain Reed watched the alien fleet approach on the Defiance's main screen. His hands were steady on the armrests of his chair, years of training keeping his fear buried deep. They're charging weapons, his tactical officer reported. Multiple targeting locks. They're trying to disable us. Good, Reed said. That means they still don't understand. All ships, execute Protocol Atlas on my mark. Around him, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. These weren't professional soldiers. Most were miners, engineers, scientists who had volunteered when the call went out. But they were human, and that meant something the aliens had yet to comprehend. They were survivors. Enemy ships in range in 30 seconds, Tactical called out. Reed waited. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. The alien ships were close now, their weapons glowing with contained energy. Mark, Reed said calmly. The human ships scattered. It wasn't a retreat. It was an explosion of movement in every direction, each vessel accelerating its speeds that should have been impossible for craft their size. The Council ships tried to track them, their targeting systems confused by the sudden chaos. "They're moving at 8 Gs, Vex's tactical officer reported, shock evident in his voice. "Commander, that's impossible. The biological stress alone should kill their crews." But the humans didn't die. They had evolved in gravity 3 times galactic standard. 8 Gs was survivable with proper restraints and training. Painful, yes. Dangerous, certainly. But survivable. And while the Council ships tried to reacquire targets, the human vessels did something unexpected. They attacked. The Defiance came around in a brutal turn that would have liquefied a Council crew. Reed felt his vision narrow as blood rushed from his head, his anti-G suit inflating to keep him conscious. Beside him, his weapons officer triggered. Their primary armament, a railgun designed for asteroid mining, now loaded with tungsten projectiles. The round crossed the distance in seconds, striking the nearest Council ship's shield generator. The shields held, but the impact sent the alien vessel spinning, its crew undoubtedly unconscious from the sudden acceleration. "Hit confirmed," weapons reported. "Their shields are strong, but they can't handle kinetic impacts at these velocities." All around the battlefield, human ships were doing the same thing. They moved like fighters, like predators, using speed and aggression that no Council species could match. The aliens had better shields, better weapons, better everything except pilots who could withstand the punishment of combat maneuvering. "Multiple Council ships are retreating," Tactical reported. "Their formation is breaking apart." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Target the command ship. Let's send a message." The Defiance accelerated again, pushing 9 Gs. Reed tasted blood as capillaries burst in his nose. But he kept his eyes open, kept his hands steady. This was what humans did. They pushed past limits that seemed absolute. They endured what should have killed them. They survived. The railgun fired 3 times in rapid succession. The first shot was absorbed by shields. The second cracked them. The third punched through, tearing into the command ship's hull. On the Yangtze, harmonious dawn, Commander Vex clutched his command console as his ship tumbled. Alarms screamed in frequencies that hurt his hearing. Half his crew was unconscious from the acceleration forces. The other half were in shock. "Damage report," he managed to say, his voice weak. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Shields at 30%. Casualties. Commander, we've lost 40 crew members." The acceleration forces alone killed them. Vex stared at the tactical display, watching his fleet scatter before the primitive human ships. It was impossible. It defied everything he knew. About warfare, about technology, about the natural order of the galaxy. "How are they doing this?" He whispered. His science officer, barely conscious at her station, pulled up biological data on the humans. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Commander, their bone density is 3 times ours. Their muscle structure is designed for high-gravity environments. Their cardiovascular systems can handle pressure changes that would kill us instantly." She looked up, her large eyes wide with understanding and fear. "They evolved on a planet trying to kill them. They're built for this." "Recall the fleet," Vex ordered. "Full retreat. We need to report this to the Council immediately." The alien ships turned and fled, their faster-than-light drives engaging as they escaped the system. Behind them, the human fleet held position, watching them go. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Reed let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Around him, his crew erupted in cheers, the tension finally breaking. "Did we just win?" his tactical officer asked, disbelief in her voice. "We won a battle," Reed corrected. "The war is just beginning. They'll be back, and next time they'll be prepared." Dr. Park's voice came through on the comm system from Earth. "Captain, we monitored the entire engagement. The data we collected is incredible. Their ships are more advanced, but their tactics are non-existent. They've never actually fought before." "Which means they'll learn," Reed said. "They'll adapt. We bought ourselves time, nothing more." "Then we use that time," General Webb said, his voice joining the channel. "We prepare. We build. We show them that Earth isn't just another world to conquer." Reed looked out at the stars, at the endless dark where the alien fleet had vanished. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was receiving news that would shake their civilization to its core. They had finally met a species that said no. They had finally met the Deathworlders. And humanity was just getting started. Back on Earth, in the United Nations building, Ambassador Cross addressed the assembled representatives of every nation. The video from the battle played on screens throughout the chamber. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cross began, "we have just learned something about ourselves. When faced with impossible odds, when threatened by powers beyond our comprehension, we did what humans have always done. We fought. We survived. We prevailed." He paused, letting the words sink in. "The aliens will return. They will bring more ships, better weapons, and this time they will be ready for us. So we must become ready for them. Not as separate nations, but as one species. One world. One voice saying that Earth belongs to humanity, and we will never surrender it." The chamber erupted in agreement. In orbit, Captain Reed watched Earth turning below him, beautiful and blue and home. His crew was exhausted, injured, but alive. They had faced the galaxy's greatest power and lived to tell about it. But Reed knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The Council would not accept defeat. They would come back stronger, angrier, determined to put humanity in its place. And when they did, humanity would be waiting. Because humans didn't know how to quit. They didn't know how to surrender. 10,000 years of evolution on a world that constantly tried to kill them had bred that weakness out of their genes. The Galactic Council had made a mistake. They had threatened the wrong species. They had awakened something that had slept quietly in its corner of space. Content to be left alone. Now the Deathworlders were awake, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Council chamber existed in a space station so old that some species considered it a holy site. Here, representatives from 10,000 worlds gathered to discuss matters of galactic importance. Today, they gathered in emergency session to discuss a single word that had not been spoken in this chamber for 3,000 years. Defeat. Commander. Vex stood before the assembled council, his body language displaying the shame his species felt when delivering bad news. Around him, holographic representatives of hundreds of species watched with expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. "You retreated," Council Prime said, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned over 2 millennia of service. "From primitives. From a single world that has barely achieved faster-than-light capability. With respect, Council Prime, they are not what we expected." Vex transmitted the battle data to the assembly. Their ships were inferior, yes. Their weapons were primitive. But the creatures themselves, they are unlike anything in Council records. The holographic displays showed the battle, the impossible maneuvers, the brutal efficiency of the human tactics. The Council members watched in silence. They should have died, a representative from the science cast stated. Those acceleration forces would liquefy most species. How did they survive? They evolved on a high-gravity world, Vex explained. Their bodies are dense, their bones thick, their muscles powerful. But it's more than physical adaptation. They have a psychological resilience we've never encountered. When threatened, they don't submit. They fight. All species fight when threatened, another council member argued. Not like this, Vex said quietly. We offered them peace, integration, a place in our civilization. They chose war instead, not because they thought they could win, but because they refused to surrender. That kind of thinking is alien to us. Council Prime studied the data in silence. Finally, he spoke. This changes nothing. They are one world. We are 10,000. Send a larger fleet. Overwhelming force. They will understand reason when faced with extinction. Council Prime, Vex said carefully, I recommend a different approach. Perhaps diplomatic negotiations. No. Council Prime's decision was final. We cannot allow a precedent of defiance. If one world successfully resists, others will try. The peace we have maintained for millennia will collapse. Humanity must submit or be eliminated. Prepare a war fleet. 500 ships. We will show them the cost of resistance. The council session ended. Across the galaxy, the greatest military force ever assembled began to gather. 500 warships, each one a masterpiece of technology refined over millions of years. It would take 3 months to assemble them all, but once ready, they would be unstoppable, or so the council believed, on Earth. Those 3 months were not wasted. General Webb stood in the newly constructed war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, holographic displays showed military installations on every continent in orbit and spreading throughout the solar system. Status report, Webb ordered. The Mars defense platforms are operational, a Chinese general reported. We have 50 railgun installations with overlapping fields of fire. The lunar shipyards completed their 20th vessel this morning, an American admiral added, all retrofitted with the improved armor plating Dr. Park designed. Webb nodded. The ships weren't pretty, they were mining vessels, cargo haulers, and research craft stripped down and rebuilt for war. But they were fast, maneuverable, and crewed by humans who had proven they could take punishment that would kill any other species. Dr. Park entered the war room carrying a data pad. General, I have the final analysis on council biology. You need to see this. She pulled up a comparison chart showing human physiology next to 17 different council species. The differences were staggering. Every single council species evolved on low-gravity worlds with minimal predation, Park explained. They never developed the aggressive traits we have. Their fight or flight response heavily favors flight, and their physical tolerance for stress is roughly 1/3 of ours. Weaknesses we can exploit, Webb said. More than that, Park continued. I've been studying their military history from the data we captured. General, they haven't fought a real war in over 3,000 years. Every conflict they've had has been resolved through overwhelming technological superiority. They show up, demonstrate their power, and the enemy surrenders. They've forgotten how to actually fight. But we haven't, Webb said grimly. Captain Reed appeared on one of the video screens, transmitting from the orbital station fortress. General, I've completed training exercises with the new recruits. We have 75 ships now, with crews that can handle 12G maneuvers. We're as ready as we're going to be. It won't be enough, Webb said bluntly. The intercepted communications indicate they're sending 500 ships. We'll be outnumbered 7-1. Then we don't fight fair? Reed replied. We use tactics they've never seen. We make them afraid. Webb smiled coldly. Captain, I'm transmitting you a new battle plan. Codename Protocol Sparta. Review it and tell me if it's possible." Reed's eyes scanned the data as it appeared on his screen. His expression grew serious, then determined. "It's insane, General. Absolutely insane." He paused. "Which means it might actually work against an enemy that thinks war is a predictable science." Over the next 3 months, Earth transformed. Factories that once produced consumer goods now churned out weapons. Scientists who had studied climate and medicine now designed armor and shields. The entire planet unified with a singular purpose: survival. Ambassador Cross worked tirelessly on a parallel track, sending messages into deep space. Not to the Council, but to the thousands of species they ruled. His message was simple. Earth had said no and survived. Others could too. Most species ignored the messages. Some reported them to the Council. But a few, a very few, listened with interest. The Council fleet departed from their staging area with great ceremony. 500 ships, gleaming and powerful, carrying the might of galactic civilization. They would teach the humans a lesson that would echo through history. The journey would take 2 weeks. Captain Reed floated in zero gravity aboard the Defiance, now reinforced with salvaged alien armor plating and equipped with weapons that pushed human engineering to its limits. Around him, the Earth Defense Fleet waited in silence. They had positioned themselves not near Earth, but far out in the solar system, scattered among the asteroid belt. 75 ships hiding among millions of rocks, their power signatures masked. Their crews waiting in the cold dark. "They'll be here in 6 hours," his tactical officer reported. Reed activated the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Reed. You know the plan. You know the odds. The Council thinks we're going to meet them head-on, that we'll defend Earth directly. Instead, we're going to show them what asymmetric warfare looks like." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Our ancestors survived ice ages and predators. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They went to the moon with computers less powerful than our phones. We come from a long line of survivors who refused to quit, even when quitting was the logical choice. Today, we continue that tradition." "For Earth," someone said on the channel. The phrase was picked up by other ships, spreading like wildfire. "For Earth, for Earth, for Earth." Reed smiled. "For Earth, all ships go dark. Wait for my signal." The human ships powered down to minimal systems, becoming invisible in the vast darkness of space. And they waited. The Council fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Commander Vex, given a second chance to redeem himself, stood on the bridge of an even larger flagship. "Scan for human vessels," he ordered. "Detecting 73 ships in orbit around their homeworld," Tactical reported. "They're waiting for us there." Vex studied the display. Something felt wrong. The humans had demonstrated tactical creativity in their first encounter. Why would they now choose such an obvious defensive position? "Proceed with caution," Vex ordered. "Full sensor sweeps. Watch for ambush." The Council fleet moved inward, their formation tight and professional. They passed Mars. They passed the asteroid belt. The human ships near Earth didn't move. "They're not running," Vex's second-in-command observed. "Perhaps they've accepted the inevitable." "Perhaps," Vex said, but doubt gnawed at him. They were halfway to Earth when Reed gave the order. "All ships, light them up." In the asteroid belt behind the Council fleet, 75 human ships powered up simultaneously. Their weapons locked onto the rear of the alien formation, targeting engines and command sections, and they fired. The first salvo caught the Council completely off guard. Railgun rounds traveling at relativistic speeds tore through shields designed to stop energy weapons. Kinetic kill vehicles slammed into hulls. Missiles equipped with nuclear warheads detonated in carefully calculated patterns. 20. Council ships were destroyed or disabled in the first 30 seconds. Evasive action. Vex screamed, but his fleet was in tight formation. Their ships too close, together to maneuver effectively. The human vessels came screaming out of the asteroid belt at maximum acceleration, their crews enduring punishment that would have killed any council species. They didn't maintain formation. They scattered into small groups, each one attacking from a different angle. It was chaos. It was brutal. It was everything the council had never experienced. They were waiting for us, Vex realized with horror. They knew exactly where we'd be. They studied our tactics. The battle became a slaughter. The council ships had superior technology, but they couldn't use it effectively. Their targeting systems struggled to track the wildly maneuvering human ships. Their weapons, designed for long-range bombardment, were less effective in close combat. And their crews, physically unable to handle high-G maneuvers, couldn't match human piloting. Captain Reed brought the Defiance alongside a council cruiser, matching its course long enough to fire point-blank into its bridge. The alien ship went dark immediately. Target destroyed, his weapons officer reported. Moving to next target. All across the battlefield, human ships were doing the same thing. They fought like wolves, working in packs, isolating and destroying council vessels one by one. When the aliens tried to retreat, humans pursued. When they tried to form up, humans attacked from unexpected angles. Commander Vex watched his fleet disintegrate. Of 500 ships, fewer than 300 remained combat effective. The humans had fewer than 70 ships, but they were winning. Full retreat, Vex ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. Emergency jump, now. The surviving council ships engaged their faster-than-light drives and fled. Behind them, the human fleet held position, watching them go once again. On Earth, billions of people watched the battle on screens, in the streets, in their homes. When the alien fleet retreated, the planet erupted in celebration. But in the war room, General Webb remained quiet. Dr. Park stood beside him, both of them studying the casualty reports. "We lost 18 ships," Webb said softly. 340 crew members. Dead because we refused to surrender. "They died free," Park said. "They died protecting home. The council would have enslaved us, General. Maybe worse." Webb nodded slowly. "The council will come again. Next time with 1,000 ships. Maybe 10,000. Then we'll fight again," Park replied firmly. "That's what humans do. We fight. We adapt. We survive." Captain Reed returned to Earth a week later. He stood before the United Nations, still wearing his battle-scarred uniform, and delivered his report. "The Council believes war is a science," Reed said. "They think overwhelming force guarantees victory. But they forgot something important. War isn't about ships or weapons. It's about will. It's about the refusal to quit, even when logic says you should." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from every nation. "We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we were willing to pay a price they couldn't imagine. We won because we're from Earth, and Earth doesn't raise quitters." The chamber rose in applause. In deep space, the broken council fleet limped home. Commander Vex transmitted his report to Council Prime, knowing it might be the last thing he ever did. The report contained one recommendation: leave Earth alone. The humans had won their right to freedom. They had proven that even the mighty Council could be defeated. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other subjugated species received Ambassador Cross's messages and began to wonder. If humans could say no and survive, perhaps they could too. The galaxy was changing. The age of council dominance was ending. And it had all begun with the wrong recipients receiving a surrender demand. and giving the right response. No. Asterisk.